Have you ever said something like maybe in the heat of the moment or just as a careless joke and immediately wish you could take it back?
Oh, absolutely. Like you want to just physically reach out and grab the words right out of the air.
Right. Before the sentence is even finished. But consider this. What if the specific words you choose every single day literally become your entire personality in the minds of everyone you meet?
It's a staggering thought when you really sit with it,
Who is?
because we spend so much time curating our physical appearance or resumes, but the raw material that actually constructs our identity in the real world is just the vocabulary we choose to deploy.
Welcome to Everyday English Flow. This is your daily English practice for natural speaking and effortless listening flow.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, and if you've ever wished you could hit rewind on a conversation, or if you get that creeping anxiety before a high-stakes discussion, you're exactly where you need to be. Today, we are going completely under the hood of human connection to rebuild your conversational armor from the ground up. And for those tracking our language goals, we have a lot to cover.
We really do. A very packed deep dive today.
Exactly. Before we sign off today, we're going to master exactly 7 core principles of communication, unpack 5 native-level phrasal verbs, and explore 4 essential English idioms.
Which is a total of 16 critical learning points, right?
Yep, 16 critical learning points designed specifically to take your English fluency firmly into that advanced C1 level.
And, it is genuinely a privilege to be here for this deep dive because this isn't just a lesson in grammar. I mean, it's not just polite etiquette.
Right, it goes way deeper than that.
Yeah, what we're really talking about today is the hidden mechanics of human psychology. It's actually believed by top legal professionals and specifically taught by highly respected trial lawyers like Jefferson Fisher that your words are literally your armor.
I just love that imagery so much. Words as armor.
It's powerful, isn't it? When you finally understand how words function as psychological tools, you can completely alter the dynamic of any relationship in your life.
Whether that's in a corporate boardroom or, just sitting at your own kitchen table. It shifts the perspective from communication being this passive thing that just happens to us to an active defense system we construct.
Exactly.
And listen, for everyone joining us today, I need you to stick around to the very end of this deep dive because we are holding back a special bonus.
A very useful bonus, I might add.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
We're going to share a single, incredibly simple phrase that acts like an emergency brake for arguments. It instantly de-escalates conflicts with the people you love most.
It's an absolute game changer. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Right. I want to start right at the foundation. The idea that what you say is exactly who you are.
Which is the bedrock of everything we're going to explore today. And the psychological mechanism at play here is what we might call compression.
Compression. Okay, unpack that a little bit.
So think about your own life. You have decades of memories, nuanced opinions, a rich internal monologue, hidden struggles. You're a highly complex human being.
Right, I have layers.
We all do. But the fascinating and frankly terrifying reality is that you are forced to compress all of that incredible complexity into the narrow pipeline of the words you speak.
Okay, when you put it like that, it honestly feels a bit unfair. Like, I have this vibrant inner life. I'm not just the rushed 3-sentence interaction I just had with the barista who got my order wrong.
It does feel unfair.
Yeah.
But we have to step out of our own ego for a second and look at it from the perspective of the receiver.
Okay, so from the barista's perspective.
Right. To the vast majority of people walking this earth, they do not have access to your rich inner life. They can't read your mind or know your true intentions.
So they only have what I actually say to them.
That's the absolute only metric they have to measure you by. If you want to be known as a kind person, it's not enough to simply feel kind internally. You must literally consistently speak kind words.
Wow. Yeah, you cannot be perceived as a patient, grounded individual if the vocabulary you use is constantly frantic, rushed, and irritable.
Exactly. The outside world only sees the output.
So bringing this directly into our daily English practice, this means our vocabulary choices aren't just about sounding smart. They are actively building our identity in real time.
Which is a perfect opportunity to highlight 2 incredible C1 level vocabulary words.
Yes. Words that describe exactly the kind of communication we should strive for. Those words are succinct and poignant.
Phenomenal choices for the C1 level. They both deal with the quality and impact of language.
Let's look at succinct first.
So to be succinct means to be brief and clearly expressed, but, it's more than just being short.
Right, it's not just giving one-word answers.
Exactly. It's the opposite of rambling. When you are succinct, you use exactly as many words as necessary to make your point perfectly clear, and not one single syllable more.
It implies a sense of editing yourself before you speak. I actually used to work with a manager who was the exact opposite of succinct.
Oh, we've all had one of those.
Seriously, if you asked him a question, he would say, well, I was thinking about the trajectory of the project, and I kind of feel like maybe we should try to approach it from a slightly different angle because the current way isn't really panning out.
It's exhausting to listen to.
Right. A succinct person would just look at you and say, our current approach isn't working. Let's pivot to a new strategy.
Perfect example. And notice the difference in how those two people are perceived by you, the listener.
The rambling manager seems unsure, hesitant, maybe a bit insecure.
While the succinct person projects massive authority, clarity, and confidence, their personality is defined by that brevity.
Let's look at the second word, poignant, spelled P-O-I-G-N-A-N-T. The G is silent.
Yes, poignant is a truly beautiful, deeply emotional word. It means evoking a keen sense of sadness, regret, or just something that is incredibly touching.
It's deeply affecting.
Yeah, and the etymology is fascinating here. It comes from a French root meaning to prick or to pierce. So when a statement is poignant, it literally pierces your heart.
It cuts right through the noise. To give our listeners an example sentence they can practice, you could say, his speech at the retirement dinner was so poignant that half the room was in tears.
That's a great example. It wasn't just a sad speech, it was meaningful, sharp, and profoundly moving.
So the goal is to use vocabulary that is succinct and poignant. But I need to challenge this whole what you say is who you are concept on behalf of our introverted listeners.
Okay, I like a good challenge. Let's hear it.
If I am a naturally quiet person and I prefer to observe rather than speak, does keeping my mouth shut mean people think I have no personality at all? Like, am I just a blank slate to them?
That is a highly insightful pushback, and it's a very common anxiety for introverts. But this is where we must draw a hard line between volume and quality.
Okay, volume versus quality.
Right. The mistake extroverts often make is assuming that more words equal better communication or a stronger personality. That is mathematically false.
So it's not about how much you talk.
Not at all. Saying two carefully chosen, highly intentional words can project vastly more personality than vomiting 20 careless, reactive words.
Vomiting words, what a visceral image.
And it paints a picture, doesn't it?
But you're right. We've all been in a meeting where one person talks for 20 minutes and says absolutely nothing.
And then the quiet person in the corner leans forward, says one sentence, and completely changes the trajectory of the entire room.
Yes, precisely. That quiet person isn't lacking personality. Their personality is perceived as wise, observant, analytical, and grounded.
Because when they do speak, their words are succinct and poignant. So for the introverts listening, your silence isn't erasing your identity, as long as the words you do choose to use are intentional.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So if our words are the building blocks of our identity when things are calm, what on earth happens when we get into a fight?
Ah, now that is the real test.
Because that is exactly when my vocabulary completely devolves. I lose my C1 English, I lose my patience, and I definitely lose my succinctness.
It happens to the best of us. And this actually brings us to an entirely different psychological framework, which is how we manage conflict.
Right, because how we navigate an argument defines our character just as much as how we deliver a compliment.
If not more. The friction of conflict strips away all of our polite filters. But before we get into the actual mechanics of untangling a fight.
Oh, I am so glad you paused, because I just noticed the clock, and we have officially hit the 10-minute mark of our deep dive.
Time flies.
It really does. If you are enjoying this everyday English flow, and if you're finding value in these communication breakdowns, please take 2 seconds to hit that like button, share this with a friend who might need it, and subscribe right now.
It really helps us out.
Your support is literally what keeps this daily English practice flowing. All right, we are back. Let's talk about fights.
Okay, so when top trial lawyers talk about arguing, they advocate for a total paradigm shift.
A paradigm shift, because most of us view arguments as a battlefield,
Right.
especially when our stress hormones are spiking.
Exactly. We see ourselves on one side of a deep trench, the other person is on the other side, and we are just firing verbal artillery at each other.
Until somebody raises a white flag and surrenders, it's all about winning. I need to prove that my memory of the event is correct and yours is flawed.
But that's the trap. The goal becomes victory, not resolution. The framework we need to adopt instead is viewing the argument as a tangled knot sitting on a table between you.
A knot on a table. Okay, I wanted to explore this visual. Because if we are both holding a tangled knot of rope and I get angry and pull my side as hard as I can,
And the other person gets defensive and pulls their side as hard as they can, what happens to the knot?
it just gets tighter. It
Huh.
becomes completely impossible to untangle. We've literally ruined the rope.
Exactly. The harder you pull on your need to be right, the tighter the conflict becomes. The only physical way to untangle a tight knot is for both parties to lean in closer, create some slack, loosen their grip, and gently work the threads together.
I think the reason we pull so hard on that rope is usually because we realize we've messed up and our pride gets in the way,
Pride is a huge factor, yes.
which is actually the perfect time to introduce our very first essential English idiom for today. And that is, put your foot in your mouth.
Ah, a classic idiom, and one that perfectly captures the clumsy nature of human communication.
We have all done this. To put your foot in your mouth means to say something deeply embarrassing, highly insensitive, or incredibly inappropriate by pure accident.
It's that horrible sinking feeling in your stomach when you hear the words leave your lips.
And you desperately wish you could unsay them.
It's a brilliant idiom because the visual imagery is so wonderfully absurd. You spoke so recklessly that you have somehow managed to lodge your own giant shoe directly into your mouth.
You silenced yourself with your own mistake.
Yeah.
For instance, you might say, I really put my foot in my mouth at the dinner party when I asked Sarah how her husband was doing, completely forgetting that they went through a terrible divorce last year.
Oh, ouch. Yes. Just the sheer awkwardness of that moment.
And normally, when we put our foot in our mouth or when we feel misunderstood, it sparks that fight. The knot gets tight.
It does. But earlier in our notes, we highlighted this incredible concept about why these daily miscommunications happen in the first place.
Yes, the radio station analogy. I want to spend some real time on this because this concept blew my mind.
It is arguably the most crucial psychological concept for understanding human conflict. The fundamental disconnect in almost every argument comes down to a breakdown in encoding and decoding.
Okay, what is the golden rule here?
The golden rule is this: what is sent is not always what is received. We have this massive cognitive bias where we assume that because we articulated our words clearly, the other person's brain absorbed the exact meaning we intended.
But they don't, because they aren't us.
Precisely. They are filtering your words through their own insecurities, their own stress levels, their own past traumas. Which brings us to the radio station analogy.
Set the scene for us.
Imagine you are driving down the highway in a car with a friend. You are behind the wheel, and you have tuned the car's internal radio to a station playing 90s country music.
Okay, I'm with you. A little Garth Brooks, maybe?
Sure, Garth Brooks. You are feeling relaxed, tapping your fingers on the steering wheel, enjoying the vibe. You are broadcasting country music.
Right.
But the friend sitting in the passenger seat next to you, their internal psychological receiver, is somehow tuned to a station playing intense early 2000s R&B.
Oh, wow. Totally different vibe.
Completely different. You genuinely believe you are sending them Garth Brooks, but the music they are actually hearing, the frequency they are processing your words on, is completely different.
And neither of you is objectively wrong in your musical taste.
Exactly. The problem isn't the music. The problem is that you are entirely unaware that you are operating on different frequencies.
Okay, let's translate this radio analogy into a real-world, everyday English scenario.
Good idea.
Let's say I've had an absolutely brutal day at the office. My boss yelled at me, I was stuck in traffic, I'm exhausted. I walk through my front door, and I see a pile of dirty dishes in the sink.
Okay, a very common scenario.
Right. So I sigh loudly and say, can we please just keep this kitchen clean for once?
Yeah.
I am broadcasting my stress. I am tuned to the I had a hard day at work station.
Yes. But what station is your partner tuned to? Let's say your partner has been struggling with feeling unappreciated lately.
Oh, no.
They have been trying really hard to manage the house, so their receiver is tuned to the I am not valued station.
So when I say, can we please keep this kitchen clean, they don't hear a stressed partner asking for help.
No, they hear a devastating personal attack on their character and their laziness.
Wow. What is sent is not what is received. And this perfectly sets up our first native-level phrasal verb of the deep dive, which is take it out on.
Yes, to take it out on someone.
To take it out on someone means to treat them badly, unfairly, or aggressively. Not because of anything they actually did, but because you are feeling angry or stressed about something else entirely.
You are taking your negative emotion and dumping it onto an innocent bystander.
An example would be, I know I had a terrible day at the office, but I shouldn't take it out on my family when I get home.
That is exactly what is happening in the dishes scenario. You are taking your work stress out on your partner. And when you do that, when they receive that message on their frequency, their psychological defense mechanisms instantly deploy.
And how do they usually deploy? It's usually with a question, right?
Almost always, they will turn around from the sink feeling attacked and they will fire back with an accusatory question, something like, "Why did you say that?" Or "Why are you acting like this?"
And here's where the knot gets pulled incredibly tight. Because I absolutely hate the word why in an argument. When someone asks me why, my blood pressure spikes immediately.
That is a universal human reaction. The word why, in the context of a conflict, is inherently adversarial. It demands justification.
It really does. It feels like an attack on a person's autonomy and their right to feel their feelings.
Think about it. When a parent says to a child, "Why did you do that?" They aren't looking for a thesis on child psychology. They are accusing the child of being wrong.
So when your partner asks, why are you acting like this?
Yeah.
Your immediate internal response isn't to rationally explain your workday.
No, your response is to raise your shield and yell, "Because I wanted to," or "Because you never do the dishes." It breeds instant defensiveness.
So if asking why just tightens a knot, what is the actionable framework here? How do we untangle this?
You have to perform a very subtle yet immensely powerful vocabulary swap. You remove the word why and you replace it with the word what.
Okay, replace why with what?
Instead of aggressively asking, "Why did you say that?" you soften your tone, lean in, and ask, "What did you hear?"
Hold on, let me just process that. What did you hear?
That feels, well, incredibly vulnerable. It doesn't feel like an attack at all.
Because it isn't. It changes the entire architecture of the conversation. It moves the dynamic entirely out of the realm of judgment and places it squarely in the realm of curiosity.
I can see that.
If your partner is clearly upset by your comment about the dishes, and instead of defending yourself, you pause and ask, what did you hear? You are explicitly acknowledging the radio station disconnect.
You're telling them, "Look, I know what signal I intended to send, but I can see you are hurting, so I need to understand what signal you actually received."
That is brilliant. It forces the other person to articulate their internal emotional state without feeling like they are on trial.
They might say, "When you sighed like that, I heard you calling me lazy and useless."
Exactly. And once they articulate that, the knot is loose. Because now you have the real issue on the table. You can say, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. That is not at all what I meant. I was just taking my work stress out on you. I think you work incredibly hard. You just untangled the knot together. You didn't fight about the dishes because the dishes were never the actual problem. The mismatched radio frequencies were the problem.
It requires an enormous amount of emotional maturity and patience to stop yourself from yelling and instead ask, "What did you hear?" But it immediately de-escalates the tension. Curiosity is the antidote to combat.
I am absolutely writing that down. Curiosity is the antidote to combat. All right, I want to transition into our next major concept.
Let's do it.
Because while untangling knots with curiosity is great for accidental misunderstandings, sometimes the conflict isn't accidental at all. Sometimes we have to intentionally deliver terrible news or heavy criticism.
Which brings us to the psychology of delivering bad news directly.
This is a massive stumbling block in both personal relationships and corporate environments. And to address it, we have to critically examine the infamous compliment sandwich.
Oh, the corporate classic. I think everyone who has ever worked in an office has been force-fed a compliment sandwich.
For our English learners who might not be familiar with this management jargon, the compliment sandwich is a feedback technique.
Right. You start by giving someone a nice compliment.
Then you shove the negative criticism or the bad news into the middle, and then you quickly follow it up with another compliment to try and soften the blow.
Like saying, "John, you are such a great team player. Now, your latest financial report was entirely incorrect and caused a massive client delay, but we just really love your positive attitude around the office."
Exactly. It's taught in management seminars all over the world as this polite way to handle conflict. But you're saying it's completely wrong.
It is fundamentally flawed on a psychological level. Trying to artificially soften the blow of bad news is actually highly disingenuous.
Let's pause right there because that is a fantastic C1 vocabulary word that we need to unpack. Disingenuous. Spelled D-I-S-I-N-G-E-N-U-O-U-S.
Yes. To be disingenuous means to be slightly dishonest, insincere, or not entirely straightforward. It is when you pretend to know less about something than you really do, or you intentionally mask your true motives behind a fake smile.
It is a severe lack of candor. An example sentence could be, "It was highly disingenuous of the politician to claim he hadn't seen the controversial email when reporters watched him open it on his phone."
Exactly. So, applying this back to our topic, why is the compliment sandwich considered disingenuous?
Yeah, why doesn't it work?
Because human beings are remarkably perceptive. The person receiving the feedback always feels the shift in energy. They hear that first forced compliment, and their brain instantly braces for the but.
They know the meat of the sandwich is the criticism.
Right. By wrapping your legitimate feedback in this forced, sugary positivity,
Huh.
you are doing two damaging things. You are cheapening your compliments so they will never believe you when you actually praise them in the future.
And the second thing,
And you are muddying the clarity of your criticism. You are avoiding the truth.
which introduces our second phrasal verb of the day, tap dance around.
Yes. To tap dance around a subject means to intentionally avoid talking directly about a difficult, awkward, or sensitive topic.
Imagine a tap dancer on a stage, making a ton of noise, moving their feet incredibly fast, doing a little performance, but never actually standing still and addressing the issue in the center of the room.
That's a great visual. An example would be the CEO tap danced around the question about impending layoffs during the all-hands meeting.
Now, just to make sure we are really enriching our listeners' vocabulary, this phrasal verb feels identical to a very famous English idiom, beat around the bush.
They're essentially twins. Beating around the bush and tap dancing around the issue mean the exact same thing. And here is the deepest psychological insight regarding this behavior.
Lay it on us.
When you tap dance around the truth, when you use a compliment sandwich, you think you are being nice. But you are actually sending a secret, unspoken, deeply insulting message to the receiver.
What is the secret message?
You are secretly telling them, I do not believe you possess the emotional resilience required to handle the reality of this situation.
Oh, wow. I need to let that sink in. Let's
Yeah.
really emphasize that. When I am too scared or too polite to be direct with you, I am actually insulting your strength. I am looking down on you.
You are infantilizing them. You are treating a grown adult like a fragile child made of glass. If we connect this back to our very first premise, that what you say is who you are, avoiding the truth makes you look weak, anxious, and untrustworthy.
And it makes the receiver feel undermined and patronized. That completely flips my understanding of politeness. So what is the actionable alternative?
If you can't use the compliment sandwich, how do you tell a friend their business idea is terrible without destroying the relationship?
Right. How?
You stop the performance, you drop the tap shoes, and you frame the conversation honestly from the very first breath. You sit them down, you look them in the eye, and you say, this isn't going to be a fun conversation, and it might be hard to hear, but I'm telling you this directly because I know you can handle it.
I'm telling you this because I know you can handle it.
It is a profoundly respectful way to open a dialogue. We like to call this equipping them with a backpack.
Equipping them with a backpack. I like that.
If you are about to take someone on a difficult, uphill emotional journey, you don't pretend it's going to be a walk in the park. You hand them the heavy backpack, you tell them the hike is going to be steep, but you tell them you believe they have the strength to carry it.
By telling them you believe they are strong enough to hear the blunt truth, you elevate their confidence before the bad news even hits.
That is an absolute masterstroke of psychology,
Yeah.
because you are setting a behavioral standard for their reaction.
Oh, I see. If I sit you down and say, I know you deeply value transparency and maturity, so I need to be straightforward and tell you that the project failed, I have just handed you the backpack of transparency and maturity.
Exactly.
Now, as the receiver, I almost have to act like someone who values transparency.
Yeah.
I can't throw a temper tantrum or start crying because you just praised my maturity. You've essentially cornered me into acting like a rational adult.
Well, it's not about manipulation. It's about calling forth the best version of the other person. Human beings naturally want to rise to the expectations that are clearly and respectfully set for them.
It is a highly effective way to navigate rough waters without losing trust.
Okay, I feel like we are completely rewiring how I interact with people. But let's shift gears into something even more challenging.
Delivering bad news is one thing. That assumes good intentions.
But what happens when someone doesn't have good intentions? Let's explore how to handle blatant disrespect and belittling.
This is a critical defensive skill, knowing how to neutralize an insult without losing your temper or your dignity. And to do this, we have to understand the neurochemistry of an internet troll or a passive-aggressive relative.
Okay, what is going on in their brains?
When someone belittles you in public or makes a snide remark, they're almost always doing it for a specific biological reason. They are seeking a dopamine hit.
They want a reaction. Precisely. They feel small, so they try to make you feel small. And if you flush red, if you get defensive, if you start stammering, or if you lose your temper and yell back, their brain gets a massive rush of dopamine. They win. They controlled your emotional state.
So we're talking about that classic family dinner scenario. You're sitting there eating turkey, and your aunt leans over and says, "Are you still single? You're not getting any younger?"
A painful classic.
Or a coworker looks at your outfit and says, "Oh, you're wearing that to the client meeting." Bold choice. They drop these little verbal grenades just waiting for the explosion.
Exactly. They thrive on the explosive reaction. So your primary job is to deny them that dopamine hit. You have to starve them of the reaction they are craving. You must remove their power entirely.
Which introduces our next essential English idiom, and perhaps my favorite one so far, take the oxygen out of the room.
It's an incredibly evocative phrase. To take the oxygen out of the room means to completely and suddenly remove the energy, the excitement, or the dramatic tension from a situation.
Like blowing out a candle.
Think about basic chemistry. A fire requires 3 things to burn: heat, fuel, and oxygen. If an insult is a spark of fire, your emotional reaction is the oxygen.
If you panic and feed it oxygen, it explodes into a massive argument.
But if you calmly remove the oxygen, the spark dies instantly. It literally cannot survive.
The manager's incredibly boring spreadsheet presentation completely took the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah.
The energy just died. So how do we practically take the oxygen away from a passive-aggressive insult? Do we just ignore them?
No, ignoring them is passive. It leaves the tension hanging in the air, and it allows them to feel like they got away with it. You take the oxygen out by forcing them to repeat it.
Wait, make them say it again?
Yes. When your aunt says, "Are you still single?" instead of reacting emotionally, you stop what you're doing. You look her directly in the eye with a completely neutral, calm expression, and you say, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. I need you to say that again."
Oh my goodness. Just imagining doing that makes my palms sweat. That is
Ah.
so incredibly uncomfortable.
It is intensely uncomfortable. But here is the magic. The discomfort is instantly transferred from your shoulders onto theirs.
Oh, I love that.
You see, cowardly insults thrive in the shadows of quick, passing conversation. They rely on momentum. When you hit the brakes, force them to drag that ugly insult out into the bright light and demand they say it twice, it suddenly sounds utterly ridiculous.
Okay, but what if they're incredibly stubborn? What if they actually have the nerve to look me in the eye and repeat it? I said, "Are you still single?" Then what do I do?
Then you escalate to a question of intent. You maintain that calm, unblinking eye contact, and you ask, "Did you say that to embarrass me?"
Wow. Did you say that to embarrass me? That is devastatingly direct. It strips away all the polite camouflage.
It acts as a psychological mirror. Suddenly, they aren't looking at your reaction. They are forced to look at their own toxic behavior. You are explicitly calling out the subtext.
And how do people usually react to that?
99% of people cannot handle that mirror. They will immediately start backtracking. They will stammer, break eye contact, and say, "Oh, no, I was just joking. You're too sensitive. I just meant."
And boom, you win. You have successfully taken the oxygen out of the room, you have protected your boundaries, and you haven't even raised your voice.
Exactly. You remain succinct and grounded. But there is another tactic we need to discuss for handling disrespect, and it's reserved for blatant, overt rudeness. The 10-second silence rule.
This sounds intense.
It is the nuclear option of boundary setting. When someone crosses a major line, perhaps they yell at you, use profanity, or blatantly insult your intelligence, words are often the wrong initial tool.
Because any words you say will just be met with more yelling.
So instead, you deploy silence. You simply wait 10 full, agonizingly awkward seconds.
10 seconds in the middle of a heated conversation feels like an absolute eternity. I want our listeners to just imagine it. Someone screams at you, and you just stare at them. 1, 2, 3. I feel like by second 4, people are going to start sweating.
They absolutely will sweat. Silence is a vacuum, and human beings are desperate to fill it. When you weaponize silence, it forces the aggressor to sit alone in the messy, toxic environment they just created.
It deprives them of the back-and-forth rhythm of a fight.
And then, after those 10 seconds of heavy silence, you calmly deliver a single, poignant sentence. That is below my standard for a response.
That is below my standard for a response. I have chills.
Yeah.
You aren't arguing the facts. You aren't defending yourself. You aren't even telling them they are wrong.
You are simply stating that they have failed to meet the minimum behavioral requirement to interact with you.
It flips the power dynamic instantly. You reclaim all the authority. There's a phenomenal real-world example of this kind of boundary setting that really drives the point home.
Yes, a prominent legal expert was sharing a story about taking his elderly grandfather to a Walmart. The grandfather was in a terrible, grumpy mood and started being incredibly rude and belittling to the young retail workers at the checkout.
We have all witnessed this nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
Someone taking their bad day out on a cashier who is just trying to do their job.
It's awful. Now, the expert didn't want to cause a massive scene and start screaming at his grandfather in the middle of the store, so he compensated in the moment by being overly polite to the workers, thanking them profusely.
But he had to address it eventually, right?
Yes, when they got out to the parking lot and got into the quiet of the car, he knew he had to enforce a standard. He turned to his grandfather and said, "If this is the way you are going to speak to people, I cannot come to the store with you anymore."
That is a very clear boundary. He didn't say, you're a bad person. He said, if
Mhm.
X happens, I will do Y.
Precisely. And it forced a behavioral change. The grandfather was shocked, but he changed his behavior on future trips. Because here is the secret about setting boundaries.
What's the secret?
A boundary is never about controlling the other person's behavior. You cannot control what someone else says. A boundary is solely about controlling what you are willing to participate in.
That is a phenomenal distinction. A boundary isn't a cage you put around them. It's a fence you put around yourself. All right, let's keep this momentum rolling right into our next concept because it naturally follows boundary setting.
How do we resolve issues when we actually want to maintain the relationship?
Exactly. This brings us to separating the person from the problem.
Yes. When you have to address a recurring issue with someone you love or respect, like a colleague, a spouse, a child, the golden rule of conflict resolution is this: never attack the person, only attack the issue.
Which gives me the perfect opportunity to use our next English idiom, throw yourself under the bus.
Go for it.
To throw yourself under the bus means to voluntarily sacrifice yourself, to intentionally take the blame or admit fault, usually in order to save a larger situation, make a broader point, or protect someone else from punishment.
So you could say, I knew the team was going to get yelled at by the client, so I threw myself under the bus and said the delay was entirely my fault.
Exactly. And I am going to throw myself under the bus right now for our listeners.
Hmm.
I used to be absolutely terrible at separating the person from the problem.
Do tell.
When I was younger and my family members would leave the living room a total mess, I wouldn't attack the mess. I would attack their identity. I would storm in and yell, "You are so lazy. You never clean up after yourselves. You have no respect for this house." I was firing verbal arrows directly at their character.
And how did that usually work out for you? Did they immediately stand up, apologize, and start vacuuming?
Of course not. They reacted entirely defensively.
Hmm.
They would argue back, call me control freak, or just storm out of the house.
Hmm.
We would have a massive fight. The living room definitely did not get cleaned.
Because you were confusing the person with the problem. When you attack someone's identity, their brain perceives it as a threat to their survival, and they cannot process your logical request to clean the room.
So what's the better approach?
This is where we employ what we call the table analogy. It is a beautiful spatial way to visualize conflict resolution.
Walk us through the table analogy.
Imagine you and your family member are sitting across from each other at a dining room table. When you sit across from someone and yell, "You are lazy," you are essentially picking up a weapon and shooting it directly across the table, aiming right at their chest.
Right. It's a head-on collision. It is me versus you.
Instead, imagine physically standing up, walking around to their side of the table and pulling your chair right next to theirs. You are now sitting shoulder to shoulder.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Then you take the problem, the messy room, the failed presentation, the unpaid bills, and you pick it up and place it firmly in the center of the table. You both look at it, you point at it together, and you ask, what should we do about this?
That spatial shift is incredible. Just visualizing that changes the entire emotional temperature of the room. We are no longer opponents fighting across a table. We are teammates looking at a mutual obstacle.
Exactly. The language changes from, you need to fix this, to, how do we solve this? You say, this room is really messy, it's stressing me out, what should we do about it? Or, this presentation draft isn't quite hitting the mark, how can we improve it before Friday?
You are fiercely protecting their identity and dignity while still ruthlessly attacking the standard that needs to be met.
It removes the sting of the ego completely.
Okay. I want to pivot here. We've spent a lot of time talking about how to navigate conflict with other people. But what if the conflict isn't external? What if the problem internal? Let's dive into conquering social anxiety.
This is a pervasive issue. Millions of highly intelligent, capable people struggle with feeling overwhelmed in social settings, like networking events, parties, even large family gatherings.
And this anxiety usually manifests in one of two extreme behaviors, right? They either freeze up completely or they talk way too much.
Yes, the nervous oversharer. We have all been cornered at a cocktail party by someone who proceeds to tell us their entire medical history, their recent divorce details, and their political theories within 5 minutes of shaking our hand.
It's exhausting to listen to, but what's truly fascinating is the root psychological cause of that oversharing. It rarely comes from arrogance. It almost always stems from a profound lack of confidence and a desperate subconscious need to be believed and validated.
Exactly. Why does lack of confidence equal more words? Because the subconscious thought process is, I am not enough on my own. If I don't give them every single tiny detail, if I don't prove my case with a mountain of words, they won't think I'm smart or interesting or honest.
They use words as a smokescreen for their insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
But the cruel irony is that the more you talk, the less credible you actually seem.
Precisely. The rule of thumb is the more words it takes to tell the truth, the more it sounds like a lie. Think about it. If you ask a colleague why they were late to the morning meeting and they give you a calm, three-word answer, traffic was terrible, you believe them instantly.
Right. It's succinct.
But if you ask them why they were late and they give you a frantic 5-minute monologue about their alarm clock not going off and their cat throwing up and the specific intersection being blocked by a garbage truck and the weather.
Your brain immediately starts to suspect they are lying and probably just slept in. The over-explanation kills the credibility.
So we need a strong visual analogy for this to help our listeners remember. You need to be a well, not a waterfall.
A well, not a waterfall. I love that.
A waterfall dumps everything it has on you all at once. It is overwhelming, loud, chaotic, and you have no control over it. You just get soaked.
And nobody wants to be soaked at a networking event.
No, they do not. But a well is deep, quiet, and contained. It has vast resources, but it doesn't force them on you. You allow people to lower their bucket and draw information from you at their own pace. You give them a refreshing bucket full, not a devastating flood.
Which introduces our third phrasal verb of the day, clam up.
Yes. While the anxious extroverts become waterfalls, the anxious introverts tend to clam up. To clam up means to suddenly, almost involuntarily, stop talking because you are overwhelmingly nervous, shy, or afraid.
It is the exact visual of a clam sensing danger and snapping its shell completely shut.
As soon as the CEO walked into the room to evaluate the pitch, the young intern completely clammed up and forgot her speech.
Right. And to prevent both extremes, clamming up like a shell or flooding the room like a waterfall, we need to introduce our fourth phrasal verb, which fits perfectly into the well analogy, draw from.
When you are a confident well, you allow people to draw from your knowledge. To draw from means to take or obtain something from a particular source. She draws from her 20 years of industry experience to give fantastic advice.
I love that imagery. So let's get incredibly practical. Imagine a listener is walking into a massive networking event tonight. They are terrified they will either clam up or become a waterfall. What is the actionable advice?
There is a 4-step framework for mastering these environments. Step 1 is the most crucial, yet the most overlooked. Let your breath be the first word you say.
Let your breath be the first word you say. That sounds almost meditative.
It is deeply grounding. When someone walks up to you and asks a question, your anxious brain wants to immediately jump in and fill the silence to prove you belong there. Do not do it. Take a deliberate, visible, deep breath before you open your mouth.
What does that actually accomplish, practically speaking?
It does 2 massive things simultaneously. Biologically, taking a deep breath engages your parasympathetic nervous system. It acts like a brake pedal for your anxiety, literally slowing down your heart rate and lowering cortisol.
And socially.
Socially, it sends a powerful subconscious signal to the other person. It shows them that you are truly listening, you are comfortable in the silence, and you are thoughtfully considering their words, rather than just frantically waiting for your turn to speak.
It projects immense quiet confidence.
Yeah.
Okay, what is step 2?
Step 2 for networking. Focus on one person. We have this false idea that networking means working the room and handing out 50 business cards.
Which is just exhausting.
It really is. Quantity does not equal quality. Do not try to scan the room while talking to someone. Find one person, plant your feet, and have a genuine, undistracted 6-minute conversation. You will be remembered far more favorably as a deep listener than as a frantic card dispenser.
Quality over quantity. I like it. Now, step 3 is my absolute favorite because I use this all the time now. Ask about the future, not the past.
This is a phenomenal conversational hack. When we meet people, we always default to the standard lazy question, how are you, or how was your day?
And when you ask that, people almost inevitably default to talking about the past. And for most adults, the immediate past is stressful. I'm tired, work was exhausting, traffic was terrible on the way here.
You accidentally anchor the conversation in negativity.
But if you tweak the question,
Yes. If you ask, what are you excited about right now, or what are you looking forward to this week, you force their brain to abandon the stressful past and look to the future.
and the future is full of potential and dopamine. They light up and say, oh, actually, I'm really excited about my camping trip next month, or I'm looking forward to finishing this big project on Friday.
You instantly elevate the entire mood of the conversation, and they associate that positive feeling with you. You become a memorable, positive presence.
Amazing. And finally, we have step 4, the weather trick.
Oh, the weather trick. This is brilliant. This is for the scenario where someone asks how you are doing, but the truth is, you are genuinely having a terrible, horrible, no-good day.
You don't want to lie and say, I'm great, but you also know that trauma dumping on a stranger at a networking event is inappropriate.
Exactly. It's the tension between authenticity and social appropriateness. The weather trick solves this. You describe your internal emotional mood as a weather pattern.
It is a highly poetic, socially graceful way to be honest without oversharing. So if you are having a rough, mildly depressing day, you don't say, I'm depressed.
No, you smile gently and say, I'm feeling a little overcast today, but I'm glad to be here.
A little overcast.
It is so honest, but it doesn't invite intrusive, uncomfortable questions. If you are incredibly stressed and angry about a deadline, you might say, it's a bit stormy in my head today with deadlines, but I'm pushing through.
It is high-level metaphorical C1 English that demonstrates incredible emotional intelligence. It creates a protective boundary while still maintaining a genuine human connection.
People respect the honesty, but they don't feel burdened by the details.
Beautiful. All right, we have arrived at our 7th and final principle of communication. And this is the umbrella that covers everything else we've talked about today: conversational goals and values.
This principle is what separates reactive communicators from masterful ones. If you observe most people, they just open their mouths and start talking without any real plan or destination in mind. It is exactly like getting on a commercial airplane and having the pilot take off from the runway without having any idea where they are going to land.
You just circle in the air, burning fuel until you eventually crash.
That is exactly what most arguments are. Circling until you crash. You must have a defined goal for a conversation before you open your mouth.
You have to ask yourself, are we just venting? Am I trying to gain clarity on an issue?
Am I trying to establish a firm boundary? Am I trying to comfort a grieving friend? If you don't know the destination, you will get hopelessly lost in the emotional weeds as soon as the other person pushes back.
And alongside having conversational goals, we need to establish conversational values.
Yes. This loops us flawlessly back to our very first point of the deep dive. Who do my words say that I am? You have to define your core values before you enter the room so you aren't swayed by the energy of the people around you.
So if I have decided that my core conversational value is patience, then it doesn't matter if the person I'm talking to is frantic, yelling, and rushing.
I will deliberately speak slowly and calmly. I am governed by my own internal values, not infected by their external chaos.
You gave 2 incredibly vivid metaphors for how to apply these values in real time: the lighthouse and the bridge.
In any healthy interaction, my primary goal is always to be a bridge. I want to span the gap between us, find common ground, connect with the person, and meet them in the middle to solve the problem.
But we have to be realistic. Sometimes you encounter someone who is so difficult, so toxic, so angry, or so fundamentally opposed to your values that building a bridge is structurally impossible.
So what do you do when the bridge collapses? You transition into being a lighthouse. You accept that you cannot connect with them, but you can stand firm on your own foundation.
You shine a neutral guiding light.
You show them where the dangerous rocks are by setting your boundaries, and you remain utterly consistent in your character, even as they crash like violent waves against your base.
Which perfectly aligns with our 5th and final phrasal verb of this deep dive: stand your ground.
A very powerful phrase. To stand your ground means to refuse to change your opinion, your values, or your boundaries, and to refuse to give in to external pressure or bullying.
When you are acting as a lighthouse, You are standing your ground.
You aren't aggressively attacking the waves. A lighthouse doesn't fight the ocean, but you certainly aren't letting the ocean move you either.
Despite the intense, threatening pressure from the corporate board, the young CEO stood her ground on the new environmental policy. And that brings us to the ultimate conversational value.
The one rule to rule them all, which I think every single person listening should adopt immediately. The kindness rule.
It is remarkably simple, yet it requires profound strength. The rule is this: if there is any room whatsoever for kindness in a conversation, use it.
Even when you are dealing with someone you actively dislike, even when you are fiercely disagreeing with a business rival, if you can find one genuine, kind thing to say, or one polite way to frame your disagreement, do it.
Why? Some people would say that's showing weakness to an enemy.
Because of regret. You will never, ever regret being kind. You might lay awake at night regretting losing your temper. You will definitely regret a cheap, sarcastic joke you made at someone's expense.
But you will never, in your entire life, look back on a tense interaction and think, man, I really wish I hadn't been so kind and respectful to that person.
It is the ultimate conversational armor. It protects your peace of mind.
Okay, my mind is thoroughly expanded. This has been an absolute masterclass in human psychology and advanced English vocabulary. We have covered 7 principles, 5 phrasal verbs, 4 idioms. But I made a promise to our listeners at the very beginning of this deep dive, and I intend to keep it. We have a bonus.
Yes, we do. The de-escalation phrase.
You promise that there is a single magic bullet phrase that instantly brings humanity and de-escalation to intense family conflicts. What is the phrase?
The phrase is just 3 words. I'm learning too.
I'm learning too.
It is incredibly powerful because it disarms the hidden driver of most family conflict, the expectation of perfection. When you are in a heated, bitter argument with your spouse, or you are deeply frustrated with a rebellious child, the tension usually stems from a rigid dynamic.
You are expecting them to act perfectly according to your rules, and they're expecting you to be the flawless authority figure with all the right answers.
But the truth is, none of us have all the answers. We're all just stumbling through life, figuring this out as we go.
Exactly. So when the argument is escalating and the knot is getting tight, you pause. You drop your armor for a second and you say, look, I know I'm frustrated, but this is my first time being a parent to a teenager. I'm learning too.
Or you say to your partner, this is our first time navigating this kind of severe financial stress together. I'm learning too.
It completely shatters the ego in the room.
It shatters it. It levels the playing field entirely. It reminds the other person and it reminds yourself that you are just a human being, you are vulnerable, and you are genuinely trying your best.
It moves you from opponents back to being teammates on the same side of the table.
It almost always softens the other person's heart and drains the anger from the room.
I'm learning too. That is the ultimate bridge. I absolutely love that. Listeners, I want you to write that down on a sticky note and put it on your fridge today.
It will change the dynamic of your home.
Well, we have reached the end of our time for this extensive deep dive. If you found deep, actionable value in this conversation, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to keep your English flowing.
Your daily practice and consistency are the only things that build true fluency.
Language is a muscle. Consistency is the only way it grows. Now, to prove to us that you made it all the way to the end of this intensive English practice, I have a specific task for you.
Let's see who's still with us.
I want you to go down to the comment box right now and type the phrase, I stay committed. That is your digital signature of dedication to your fluency journey. And while you are down there, here is your homework assignment. I want you to tell us the meaning of the idiom, take the oxygen out of the room, in your own words in the comments below.
Let's see who was paying close attention during Principle 4.
I am very much looking forward to reading those definitions and seeing how you apply it. Before we officially sign off, do you have one final thought to leave our listeners with as they go about their week?
I do. It's something for everyone to mull over quietly on their own time. We've spent this entire deep dive talking about external communication, how the words you speak dictate how others view your personality. We've talked about building external armor.
Right.
But I want you to consider this. If your spoken words define your reality to the outside world, how do the silent words you speak to yourself in your own mind define the reality you experience internally?
Oh, wow. That hits hard. If we wouldn't take the oxygen out of the room for a stranger, we certainly shouldn't be suffocating ourselves with negative self-talk.
Exactly. The most important, most impactful conversation you have every single day is the internal monologue you have with yourself. Make sure it's a kind one. Make sure you're building yourself up, not tearing yourself down.
What an incredible, poignant note to end on. Remember, everyone, your words are your armor, both out in the world and inside your own head. Choose them wisely. Thank you for practicing with us, and we will see you next time.